There's nothing more common and yet so poorly understood as sleep. In Evelyn de Morgan's artwork Night and Sleep, the goddess of night Nyx and the god of sleep Hypnos are in a transcendent, almost ethereal state, scattering crimson poppies onto the planet below. Painted in 1878, the piece gives us an insight into how sleep was thought of before industrial times. It was mysterious, otherworldly, non-negotiable. But today, we treat sleep as either a nuisance, something lazy people do, or something to be measured and optimized. Our society's lack of respect for sleep is literally making us ill and could even destroy our democracies. Hi, I'm Nikki's. I make videos on cultural and social issues, and today we're going to talk about sleep and why we sleep so badly, what kind of effect it's having on our physical health and even our democracies. This is a really interesting one, and I really hope you don't fall asleep because we talk about sleep a lot. So grab yourself a cup of coffee or hot tea and let's get into it. So good morning, we've just woken up. According to your circadian rhythm, your alertness reaches its peak level around an hour after you wake up. I wake up at around 9. Capitalism doesn't like that, but I need my 8.5 hours. I'm pretty lucky because I work from home. I could get my 8.5 hours pretty easily, but a good portion of our society is actually underslept. And instead of telling you this statistic, I'm actually going to ask you, do you feel like you've slept enough? If you've watched my videos before, you already know what I'm going to say next. It's not your fault. Under capitalism, we don't value sleep or rest. If you spend 8.5 hours sleeping, to capitalism, that's 8.5 hours lost productivity, lost hours spent shopping and growing the economy, i.e. to capitalism, sleep is a supreme waste of time. Capitalism has created a 24/7 world. The world never stops, the world never rests, so if you sleep or if you rest, you feel like you've lost out. Another consequence of the 24-hour world is that sleep norms are diurnal, which means most of society sleeps during the night and does their work and stuff during the day. But if we have a 24-hour world, then there are some people who are going to need to stay up during the night to make sure we have a 24-hour world. And those people are called the sleep minority. They miss out on their sleep so that the lifestyles of everyone else can be upheld. And what's really sad is that those people get such bad sleep because our sleep norms are diurnal. So if those people want to get good sleep during the day, it's almost impossible because there's so much noise and stimulation in the outside world. And these people can't ask their neighbors to be quiet or school children to not go to school or to not make noise. It shouldn't come as a surprise that those in the sleep minority are actually the most sleep deprived and most underslept of any other group. Capitalism also sees sleep as a problem to be solved, something to be gotten rid of. So much so that the US military is actually funding studies to solve the problem of a soldier needing sleep. They've been studying this bird called the white-crowned sparrow, which can actually stay awake for 2 weeks. If they end up being successful with this study, then they could end up making a product out of it. And we all know what happens to products made by the US military. Usually everyone ends up using it. So there could be a time in the future where you can buy your way to no sleep. So I was reading this book called 24/7 Late Capitalism and the Ends of Sleep. And in it, the author says, in its profound uselessness and intrinsic passivity, with the incalculable losses it causes in production time, circulation and consumption, sleep will always collide with the demands of a 24/7 universe. The huge portion of our lives that we spend asleep, freed from a morass of simulated needs, subsists as one of the great human affronts to the voraciousness of contemporary capitalism. Bruh. So a couple of hours after lunch, you reach your peak coordination skill level, which means now's a good time to start journaling, start planning for the week, doing the important strategizing stuff. And yes, I am having some cereal for lunch, don't at me. There's never a bad time to have cereal. Okay, so what is sleep inequality? So sleep inequality is actually a massive problem in our society, to the point where white people are seemingly the only ones getting an adequate amount of sleep. White people are the least likely of any racial group to report being underslept. Single parents and working people are also more likely to report being underslept. Sleeping poorly is strongly associated with poverty and race. So if you're rich, if you're white, you're probably getting enough sleep. And if you're not, then being tired is not the only consequence. There are actually huge health consequences associated with poor sleep. It can increase your chances of all sorts of diseases, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's. And if you want to learn more about this, I really recommend Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. And I'll just leave you with one quote from his research that he's done. Limiting sleep to just 4 to 5 hours for one single night will drop levels of critical anti-cancer fighting cells called natural killer cells by 70%. So yeah, lack of sleep really fucks with your health. And I wonder what's going to end up happening. Like, are we going to have a post-pandemic society where people who work from home and who make a lot of money get the adequate amount of sleep they need, and then there's like a worker class that's keeping society going that's completely underslept and having all these health problems? It's completely unfair. So it's around 5 p.m. right now, and my cardiovascular and muscle strength has just hit its peak. So I'm going to do some yoga, but before I start, we need to talk about how capitalism wants us to think that everything is an individual problem, when really everything is a collective problem, including sleep. If you search on the internet right now, tips to sleep better, you'll probably be told, get exercise, reduce your stress and anxiety, turn off your electronics before bed, make your bedroom purely a place for sleeping, and make sure you're eating healthy. That advice on its own is great. It all makes sense and it's a no-brainer. But we don't live in a just society, which means that if you're an hourly wage worker, you probably don't have time to be exercising 4 or 5 times a week. If you're a single parent, you're probably really stressed out and there's probably nothing anyone can do to help that except a good childcare system mandated by law, but that's a topic for another day. And if you work from home and you're a young person, you probably can't afford housing to live on your own, so you probably live with roommates, which means you're probably working from your bedroom. Our society is not conducive to taking on this advice, and the advice doesn't match up to the reality of the world we live in, which is why I keep saying this is a collective problem. A lot of things aren't in people's individual control, which is why government is so important. If governments mandated more vacation days, people could have time for recovery sleep. If we had flexible working hours and better childcare, then people could reduce their anxiety and stress. If governments had stronger regulations on light and noise pollution, on increasing the availability of fresh, healthy food for everyone no matter what their income level is. The government isn't going to do this without us making it a priority for them, but I think the responsibility of this lies on the shoulders of the well-rested, to make sure everyone else is well-rested too. In the next section, you'll find out why this is so important. So right around this time is when your body starts to secrete melatonin and starts to wind down to get ready for bed. This is the time of day when you're least likely to have control over your emotions, and your decision making is probably not as good as it was earlier on in the day. It's also the time of day Hitler most liked to make speeches. Yes, Hitler, because that was when people were most likely to submit to his political will in his words. And it's totally true. Studies have confirmed that people who are underslept are less likely to vote, less likely to engage politically in general. And the crazy thing is that when you consider that poverty and race are the biggest predictors of poor sleep, and poor sleep means you're less likely to be politically engaged, it's hard to think that this was all just by accident. So it's not dramatic to say that sleeplessness could actually be destroying democracy. So it's now time for bed, and this is the time of day when your body reaches its lowest body temperature. And my brain's getting ready to have a nice little bath in the cranial fluid, because that is what happens when you sleep. It's creepy, I know. My point with this video is to show you that we don't value sleep enough in our society. We don't value it to the point where it's actually actively harming us. And I think we could all benefit from thinking of sleep a little bit more like we used to in the 19th century, as something romantic, as something transcendent, something that inspired art and poetry, not something to be measured and optimized and commodified. Our society not valuing sleep is actually our society not valuing humanity and the limits that all of us have. We're not machines. We need rest. And I think it all comes down to that. Our capitalist society doesn't value rest. So we've all been conditioned not to value our own rest or other people's rest. And this YouTube video is not going to change things automatically. We all need to be aware of it and start to prioritize sleep and rest in our daily lives. So hopefully this video has encouraged you to think about sleep a little bit differently. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think sleep should be more prioritized in our society? Do you disagree with anything I've said? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And on that note, I'm exhausted, so I'm gonna pass out. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Good night.